So my father shared with me that when he decided to join the Air Force, it was just really the time frame of 1949 to 1950, where the Army Air Guard then decided to create a new division called the Air Force. My father was part of that, which is very intriguing because he joined the military. What year, Dad?
Well, I was recruited on December 29th of 1949.
Okay. But did you sign up for the Air Force or the Army?
I joined the Air Force to avoid being drafted into the Army.
And you were given exemption from having military college credentials of taking a test.
Well,
That
that's a whole different story.
Really?
That was later.
Wow.
See, when I went in, I was very disappointed when I found out that you had to have basically a college degree to qualify for aviation cadets. But I didn't want to be drafted, because if you weren't in school and weren't married and had children, you were going to be drafted. This is the Korean War, when it was just beginning, ramping up. So I was leaving college, and I knew that I couldn't stay out of school and not be drafted, so I elected to join the Air Force. That way I had a choice. I could have joined the Navy, I could have joined the Army, could have joined the Marines. But I joined the Air Force.
That was December of 1949.
Yeah. Yes. And I had
How long had you gone to college? 1 year or 2 years?
one term.
Okay.
See, I went on a football scholarship that allowed me to stay in the dormitory and live on campus, and my parents didn't have to pay anything. They had to pay tuition, but they didn't have to pay dormitory or fees and all that. As soon as the football season was over, it was no fun for me. That was what they called a tailback then. It's like the quarterback today. You get the ball, but it was centered to you. You weren't down under center, and the ball would be centered to you, and you had plays where you would hand off to the other halfback, or you'd hand off to the fullback, or you had the option to run or pass. And so when the fall football season was over, that's like in November, mid to late November, it wasn't any fun for me just going to school. And I just knew I'm wasting my parents' money. You know, they still had to pay tuition. But I also knew if I left school, I'd be drafted. Because I was right, they had classifications you were in for draft. And if I wasn't in school, I was going to be drafted because I was single and all this and that. So I joined the Air Force. And I had to leave home on December 29th and go to Chicago and get on a troop train. And the Air Force, gave me all the information and made all the arrangements. So I got a train from Mendota to Chicago and found my way to the troop train. So we got on the train in Chicago and headed out. We were on the train for 3 days, down through Illinois and then into Georgia and Alabama, and then across over through Mississippi and Louisiana. So we got to Texas 3 days later, and they had to break our train up twice because some of us were going to Lackland Air Force Base and some were going to Biloxi, Mississippi, and so they had us in cars, and they split those cars off. And oftentimes those separations took place at night over the 3-day period. So at any rate, we get to Lackland Air Force Base, and the drill sergeant, waits us up and gets us out off the railroad, the cars, out onto the tarmac, and lines us up. And the first thing they're going to give us is breakfast. And then we're going to go to the quartermaster's quarters facilities, and we'll be issued uniforms, fatigues and vest uniforms and shoes and everything else. So it's like 3 a.m. in the morning. Well, guess what we get for breakfast? Hot beans and hot dogs. Welcome to the airport.
Well, what do you expect? Steak and shrimp?
So, so we get our breakfast and we go over to the quartermaster's facilities and we get the big line and they measure us for shoes and pants and shirts and they start issuing us, first of all, fatigues. We didn't
Yeah.
get dress uniform,
Yeah,
fatigues.
yeah.
So for the next 13 weeks we're wearing fatigues and you know, in the military, your dress uniform for the spring or the summer or the winter takes place on a given day. Like let's say the summer dress doesn't begin till June 8th. It doesn't matter if it's 100 degrees the week before. You're still in those heavy cotton blues. then you get your summer uniform, which is suntans and
Yeah,
you know, a tan shirt and whatnot.
sure.
And then you get the winter dress, I think sometime in the first or second week in November. Of course, it doesn't matter. You're wearing your summer uniform right up to that day, and it could be 10 degrees. You're still in the summer uniform. You're in the army now, man. You're in the military now. So at any rate, I spent 13 weeks there in basic training, and we did, you know, the first morning we sleep on the tent. Well, I was about to tell you. So they hadn't planned adequately for this large influx of recruits. They were really ramping the military up, all the branches, and so they didn't have anywhere for us to sleep, to be. So they put big tents up with cots and you know, like a little wooden case at the end of the bed that you could put your toiletry in and odds and ends and that kind of thing. We're sleeping on cots, and the drill sergeant's giving us instructions about, you know, how to conduct ourselves there. And he says, I'll tell you what. He said, before you guys put on your brogans in the morning, the brogans were the shoes, the heavy. Before you put your brogans on in the morning, turn it upside down and shake it or hit it against something, because snakes find their way in there at night. Well, one of our guys in our squadron stuck his foot in the shoe one morning and got bit by a rattler. He's in the hospital.
Oh my God.
Oh, and that kind of stuff went on. It was nightmare.
Wow.
So then then we're learning all the new. So the first or second day, the drill sergeant says, "Okay, we're going to police the area." Okay, you want to know what police the area means? He said, anything you see that doesn't grow there or whatever, you pick it up and you throw it in your little trash can that they gave you. Okay, so we're all walking around picking little things up, pieces of wood, pieces of paper. So I picked up a rock. The drill sergeant said, "Airman, what are you doing?" I said, "You said pick up anything that doesn't grow." He said, "Rocks grow here." Okay. I'm serious.
Toby would remind you that one day.
I'm serious. The rest of the guys got a laugh out of that. It's this guy picking up rocks. Hey, Herbert, what are you doing?
You felt dumb as a rock, right?
I never knew they grew.
Yeah, as life progressed, you began to understand that, right? You met a lot of dumb on the rocks people.
Well, so many of the enlisted men, recruits like me, complained and piss and moan to their mom and dad back home. You know, some pretty influential guys got a couple senators involved, and they Senate investigation. Oh, I'm dead serious. Because we were getting such.
Dumb as the rocks.
Yeah, you mean-
Investigation.
Well, there were just a lot of things. Some of the airmen couldn't get uniforms. You know, they didn't have adequate uniforms. Or they didn't have the sizes. And sometimes at mealtime, they didn't have adequate amount of chow. No, you can check that out. That was a congressional investigation of the Air Force for not having planned.
It's a
well
damn
enough.
shame they don't continue it.
So I was there 13 weeks, and then I got shipped to Scott Air Force Base and was able to get a good education there. You know,
Yeah.
trained me in electronics and whatnot. And then when I got, then after I'd been in the Air Force, they were so desperate for pilots, they offered anyone who could pass the college equivalency exam might qualify for this. And man, I lived in the library at night. As long as the library was open till 9, 10, 11, I'd go to the library after we did duty during the day, and I was reading everything. I was reading physics and math and chemistry and history, and I passed the college equivalency
Wow.
exam. So
Wow.
I'm like 19 now, and I was assigned to aviation cadets at Moultrie, Georgia, at a base that was run by a civilian contract company, Hawthorne Aeronautics, and they ran that base there, and they flew T-6Gs, a plane that had a big cylindrical 14-cylinder engine, and it was a low wing, monoplane, and that was a trainer, a T-6G trainer, and it had a variable pitch prop. It had retractable landing gear, and this was high tech then. To have a variable pitch prop. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, but was that 1950 or 51?
I was 50. 51, I'm sorry, I was 51.
Yeah.
Yeah. So at any rate, so we're in, we can't leave the base for, I think it was 9 or 10 weeks. For the first 9 or 10 weeks, we couldn't leave the base. We had no time off.
This is in Georgia.
In Georgia, Moultrie, Georgia.
Yeah.
You're right on the edge of the Okefenokee Swamp. So we get a weekend off, and we just got our paychecks. I think we got paid on Thursday. We got the weekend off, and 3 or 4 of us guys head for, the one guy, my buddy, his dad was the editor of the Houston Star Chronicle, and he drove in a new Cadillac convertible. But for the first 10 weeks, he couldn't have access to the car. He had to sit in the parking lot there at the base. His name was Ken Devlin. And Ken took 3 or 4 of us into Columbus, Georgia. We found our way into a nightclub that had illegal gambling going on in the basement. Crap tables, slot machines, blackjack and all that
Yeah.
stuff. And they cashed my check, or whatever it was. We got paid once a month. I don't remember now what it was. It wasn't a lot of money. It was probably a little over $1,000 maybe to last for the whole month.
Yeah.
But so we went down and we're playing, and I'm winning. I'm getting ahead of like $1,000, $2,000.
Wow.
And I quit for a while. My buddy talked me into coming back. I lost it all. I lost everything. And my buddy, the same guy, his name was Roger Walker. He was the son of a lawyer in Charlie. And he and I are kind of close friends. So we're going out to the parking lot, getting ready to leave the club about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning. And I see a car with the door open and some legs hanging out. So I said, Roger, maybe we ought to go see if that guy needs help. So we went over there, and here's a guy laid out in the front seat, or just laid out, drunk, and his coat is fallen open, and his billfold's right there. So Roger takes the billfold out, he opens it up, and there's a star. It's the sheriff of Colquitt County Village. And I told that guy that story yesterday. The guy that was born and raised in Baltimore. He said, "I don't tell my dad that story." I said, "The Colquitt County in Columbus is Colquitt." He said, "That's right, Colquitt County is where it was." So, so Roger and I look at one another, which we do. And Roger said, "You know," he said, "I'm tempted." And I said, "Well, I am too, but I don't, it's not right." He said, "Well, it isn't right," but he said, "Think of this too." He said, who is he going to tell they got rolled in a parking lot at 3 in the morning in a nightclub that's got illegal gambling going on? I said, no. I said, we don't want to take the guy's money. So we didn't do it, but he was right.
Yeah.
Sheriff's not gonna- So I told that guy up at the Harley dealership that he laughed and laughed up until my dad that story. So that's how I got to know that Columbus, Georgia was in Colquitt County. And bear in mind, I'm broke by now. I've lost all my money.
Yeah.
And I got to wait another month. But you could live in the military without any money. I mean, you had a place to sleep. You had 3 meals a day.
Yeah.
You had your clothes. You know.
Free cot.
And I know I've lost all my money. And every time one of my bear buddies see me coming, they turn around and go the other way. They
Right.
don't hit them up for. I need it all. Give me a little cash.
Now, but that was where you went from the pilot training through prop to jet, right?
Yes. The jet trainer was a T. They had a jet trainer that had a reciprocating engine. It was called a T-28. But they had a engineered that it behaved a lot like a jet. But the real jet trainer then was a T-33.
So you went through the basic training of prop training.
Yeah. And
And
then we started. See, we went in shifts. You had a group who would go in the morning, a group in the afternoon, a group in the evening. And when we got to the evening group, we started flying the T-33 jet. And it was a nice little plane, but they had not overcome the the problem was called flame out. And flame out was a phenomena with those early jets. Let's say you're coming in for a landing,
Yeah.
and you realize at the last minute you may not be hitting the runway, so you're going to make a fly around. Well, if you push that throttle all the way to the firewall, you could flame out that jet. Now this thing is just like a rock.
Wow.
So it was very dangerous. You really had to kind of feather that. You couldn't just shove it forward.
Yeah.
But that was your first instinct. You know, you realize, oh, well, I'm not going to get the runway. I'm going around. And then the engine sputters, and now you just the aerodynamics of a jet is it has no glide path. It just drops.
Yeah.
But anyway, it wasn't too long after we got into that training that my instructor, your instructor flew right behind you in the seat right behind you, and he had the same controls you did.
Yeah.
And so we're coming in for a landing in the evening, maybe just about this. And all of a sudden, the instructor takes the controls away from me. He said, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "I'm getting ready to flare out." He said, "No." He said, "You're 100 feet above the runway." He said, "I'm taking over, and we're going to fly around." He said, "Tomorrow we're checking your vision." Well, what they found out was you have something called rods and cones in your eyes. And the rods and cones function in such a way as to help your vision kind of deal with changing light conditions. But if they don't react quickly enough, especially at a time like this,
Yeah.
your depth perception is pretty seriously affected.
Yeah.
So that's what was going on. I thought I was, maybe 20, 30 feet above the runway, but I'm 100 feet.
Mm.
And that was it. They couldn't let me go forward because there was no way to deal with that.
Yeah.
And they hadn't perfected the problem with the flame out.
Yeah.
That was probably a year later before I learned. Of course, I was out of cadets by then. So that's how I came to have. They offered me the option to go to Navigator's Officer School in Biloxi, Mississippi.
Yeah.
Because I'd had a lot of good training, And but I would have to sign up for a whole new term. In other words, I have to sign up for another 3 years right from that time.
Yeah. Wow.
And by this time, I'd have been in the Air Force for a year and a half or something like that.
Yeah.
A little over a year.
Sure.
And so I declined.
But had you been a year later, that may not have been a problem.
Right.
Wow. And then you would have probably become a commercial airline pilot.
I did. I loved flying. I loved it.
But that was your goal, to eventually become a commercial. So if you had been a year late, you may become a commercial airline pilot.
Right.
And that's something.
But I would have never met your mother.
Well, I know that, but I'm just saying in life experiences, that it's just incredible on the technology was a year late for you.
For me, it was, yeah.
You had a different life.
Right. Also, over time, they perfected their screening, where they were able to detect that, problem with the depth perception.
Yeah.
And so you would have never made it.
Yeah.
Into flight
Right.
training.
But when you joined the Air Force, your real goal long term was to eventually be a commercial pilot.
That's what I wanted to be.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a fighter pilot.
Wow.
I was nuts.
Yeah.
I was nuts
That is-
enough to think that I just should go to
But
Korea and
what
retire.
fighter pilot jet would you have wanted to fly at that time?
Well, some of the P-51 was still being used. Then they had the Hellcat.
But that was
Yeah.
the Mustang?
Yeah, the P-51 Mustang. Yeah.
Right.
And I did fly one once.
Really?
Yeah. Well, with the instructor.
Yeah.
It was just like a familiarization flight. And man, that was a hot number. Boy, that had torque. I mean, that engine had so much torque. The way you corrected for torque was with your rudder, because that nose would pull that plane right around. But if you put in full rudder,
Yeah.
left rudder, it would stop the tail from moving this way.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't get that characteristic with the nose, and it could get away from you. I mean, it wasn't unusual for crashes on takeoff because of that torque.
But when you joined the Air Force, what of your friends made it? Did you have any like personal friends that got through and made it and then became commercial pilots?
No, most of my friends never. Two of them tried to qualify and they didn't. One of my best friends, Sid Winter, who married my sister's girlfriend, Sid tried to, and he was from Argentina. He was a very bright guy. He was a German guy, and he was going to school at Brigham Young University.
Yeah.
But he was from Argentina, and his parents. He had an uncle who was a professor at Brigham Young University.
Yeah.
His family sent him to Utah to go to Brigham Young, but he did the same thing I did.
Was that a Mormon
Yes.
school?
Yes.
Okay.
He was Mormon, but he was dropping out of school, and he was facing the same problem I was. If he dropped out of school, he'd be drafted.
Yeah.
So he joined the Air Force too, but I didn't meet Sid until I got to be I was at Seward Air Force Base there in Nashville, and that's where I qualified for cadets, and they shipped me down to Moultrie, Georgia. And man, that's a remote place. Whew. Remote place. I had four cadets to we had like a bedroom suite with little. Four of us would occupy that. Cadets was a guy by the name of Bill Harden, and Bill's family, and he was from Copenhagen, Denmark. And the United States military, Air Force, was training military personnel from friendly countries.
Yeah.
You know, it was called the MDAP, the Mutual Defense Act program.
Yeah.
You know, the program where different countries would agree to train different other countries' military members in selective areas of military training.
Yeah.
And the United States was training cadets. We had a French Moroccan in my room. We had Bill Harden, who was from Copenhagen, and we had another kid who was from Poland. And his dad was a general in the Polish Air Force. His name was Jacques Ganu. But this kid Bill Harden, he was really a bright guy, a nice guy. But he had a big picture on the wall behind his bunk of his girlfriend. She was a beautiful Danish lady, and she was laying on a red carpet, like a red velvet carpet, and she's in the nude. but she's laying in such a way that, you know, the private parts aren't showing.
Yeah.
And Bill would just sit there and look at that picture. And Gary, honestly, he got so sick, homesick, he was hospitalized, and they sent him back home to Copenhagen. I'm serious. And years later, I did check that out. Yes, there was a family in Denmark that owned a furniture manufacturing company. And the names were Hardens. Oh, and the other thing was, what really did it, by this time we had solo. You know, we'd taken our solo flight. And he crash landed in the Okefenokee Swamp. And they always told us, if you crash land in a remote, you know, jungle area, whatever, stay with the aircraft. And if you got a parachute, spread it out so it can be spotted.
Yeah.
Well, he left the aircraft, and then he couldn't find his way back. Now he's in the middle of the swamp.
Yeah.
You know, gators and different snakes. And it took him 2 days to find him. They had to and the poor guy was traumatized. I had to hospitalize him. Well, here was, the poor guy was.
Good Lord.
Then we had one other guy that crash landed in a farmer's yard and went through the big chicken house. The guy was a chicken farmer. He talks about the plane going through the chicken house and all the chickens and feathers. And the farmer comes on. The farmer's mad as hell, cussing him. He's lucky to be alive. And here's the farmer, you dumb son of a bitch.
All right, Dad, I'm going to cut you off. Great military stories, right?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one other.
Okay.
When we soloed, see, the base we were flying from was a little inlet in Georgia,
Yeah.
and then due south of it was Jacksonville.
Yeah.
So the solo flight, and there were about 16 of us in our particular group. So all 16 of us take off solo, and we fly to Jacksonville. Well, we're flying by what's called dead reckoning, you know, where we study maps and see a lot of things on the ground that you recognize, and they'll tell you where you're at.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things I'll tell you is if you're flying near a small town and you see a water tower, you know, fly around the water tower. You'll see the name of the town.
Yeah.
Well, we get there to Jacksonville. We're there and there and there, and we're waiting for this one other cadet to show up. And it gets to be dark, so now we got to stay overnight. Well, he shows up, and he got lost. And have you ever heard of Apalachicola?
What?
Apalachicola?
Yeah.
Well, it's not too far from Tallahassee. It's more inland, but it's
Yeah.
not too far from Tallahassee. Well, Apalachicola has a nice water tower
Mm-hmm.
that's near the beach.
Yeah.
So this kid spotted the water tower, so he drops down and he's circling it, trying to figure out the name of the place. Well, Apalachicola goes all the way around the tower. You know, A-P-A-L-O-C. So he can figure out the name. So he had to make an emergency landing. And I've driven past that water tower. It's on the way from. And I've driven by that. He's right. The name goes all the way around the tower. Now you can't make that up.
I tell you. He's spelling it out, A, but he's going too fast.
And then he had to make an emergency landing somewhere over near Tallahassee because he was running low on fuel. That's probably wasting flying around the tower trying to figure out.
He forgot.
Never go by there. You'll see that.
He
It's
forgot
true.
He forgot what letter he's on by the time he went on next time. A, L, no, O. Let me go around again. That's pretty classic.
That's it.
But Dad, you were in the military for the Air Force technically, what, 2 years?
No, almost 3, and then the Korean War ended, and they started releasing personnel early because they didn't need that buildup. And I had what they called an AFSC, Air Force Service Code, which was the duties you perform.
Yeah.
So I was an airborne electronic technician, and my duty code was declared surplus. So I applied for a early release,
Yeah.
and there were things going on with my mom and dad, my mom's babies and everything, and so I probably would have qualified for a hardship. But I used the surplus code, and I was offered an honorable discharge, and I got out in what was it, November? Yeah, November. And but I'd already met your mother
Yeah.
because I was stationed there at Nashville. We could go into the base. We could go off base every weekend if we wanted to, and I went into Nashville a lot. A buddy of mine, Sid and I would go in, and see, that's the other story. The YWCA there in Nashville on Saturday nights hosted a dance for, see, Fort Campbell, Kentucky was north of Nashville, Seward Air Force Base was south, and then there was another Army facility somewhere. So they had a dance on Saturday nights. They invited the young women and the military personnel. So I went to the dance a few times, and one of the times I saw your mother standing across the room, and she's with her friend Doris, and Doris was a little Dolly Parton. You know, she was a little really stacked. So I went across the room and I asked Doris to dance, and Doris said no. So then I asked your mother to dance. So your mother's never forgotten that. So a number of years later, she asked me, "Why did you ask Doris to dance before you asked me?" I said, "Well, I thought sure you'd decline me." She said, "Boy, you think fast."
Yeah. Doris would have killed you early. Doris would have killed you early,
Oh,
right?
She and I would have killed one another.
You're-
She married my good friend Howard.
Yeah, exactly. He died early.
They had 8 kids.
Yeah. Yeah, he passed 50 years ago, right?
Yeah. Doris, after about the 6th kid, she said, I can't sleep with him again. That's Howard one time. I said, Howard, don't you know how that happens? 8 kids.
Yeah, Doris did you a favor.
Yeah, she sure did.
And Howard, you led Howard into the torture.
Poor Howard.
Hey, Howard, let's go to the dance tonight. Want to come with me?
Yeah.
Sure, Trace. Let's go have some fun. All right, I'm gonna cut it off here in the military stories of the Popcorn Evening. Good stuff there. For those that watch my channel, so stay tuned for more stories. Did he put the grandchild to sleep? Looks like Julia is knocked out. But hey, the full moon got covered up. Oh well.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh.